They took me in the night. I was sitting on my porch, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee that tasted more like rust than roast, when the stars blinked out. One moment, Orion's belt was right where it always was. The next, it vanished, blotted out like someone had dragged black ink across the sky. I thought maybe a storm was rolling in. That's how it felt. Still. Heavy. Air so thick you could chew it. But then the crickets stopped. The wind died. Not quiet, no, something deeper. Something wrong. The kind of silence that meant the world was holding its breath. I stood up slow, my joints popping like they always did. 63 years on this earth and never once had it felt this alien. I turned to go inside, thinking maybe I was having a stroke. But the door was gone. My porch wasn't wood anymore, it was smooth, curved metal. The mountains in the distance were replaced by cold walls that shimmered like oil on water. My coffee cup hit the ground with a metallic ping, and suddenly I wasn't in Montana anymore. I wasn't anywhere I recognized. They didn't introduce themselves. They came in through the walls, tall and bent like walking sticks, their skin a glossy gray that shimmered with green veins. No eyes, just ridges. No mouths that moved, just a low-frequency vibration that made my molars buzz. I should have panicked. Should have screamed. But I didn't. I just stared at them the way a man stares down a mountain lion, curious more than afraid. One of them cocked its head and made a sound like a modem trying to connect. Then, suddenly, I heard words. Not spoken, not heard, felt star. Deep in the bones. You are specimen. Subject number 12. Bipedal predator class. I blinked. That word, predator rattled around in my skull like a bullet casing. Another one stepped forward and touched my chest with a stick-thin appendage. Cold. Pulsing. I felt a brief jolt, like static electricity mixed with anesthesia, and then my knees gave out. I fell hard on the metal floor, and for a moment everything went black. When I came to, I was naked except for my dog tags and the scar on my hip from a hunting accident back in '92. They'd taken my boots, my belt, even the old folding knife I always kept in my sock. But they made one mistake. They didn't take me. They didn't take what I'd learned crawling through enemy jungle underbrush at 20. Or what I'd taught myself skinning elk in the Rockies. Or what a man learns when he spends decades surviving not because he wants to, but because he knows how. They filed me down a hallway made of light and steel. Other people were in cages, young, old, some broken, some still fighting. A girl in fatigues. A man with soot-covered skin. Farmers, students, warriors. And that's when I knew what this was. Not a rescue. Not science. It was a hunt. And they thought we were the prey. The place they dropped me into wasn't Earth, but it tried damn hard to pretend. Rolling hills, pine forests, rivers that looked clean but smelled wrong. The air was thinner, tasted like metal and ozone, and gravity pulled just a little too hard on the bones. Whoever built this place had seen Earth but didn't understand it. The trees were spaced too perfectly, the birds moved like they were on a script, and the clouds never changed shape. It was like being inside a photograph, one that moved, but not quite right. I spent the first few hours walking, testing the terrain. I found animal tracks, but they didn't belong to anything I knew. Some looked like deer, others like wolves, but the spacing was off, too wide, too deep. I wasn't alone here. That much was clear. Then I heard it, human voices, faint through the trees. I followed the sound, moving low and quiet, instincts older than memory guiding my steps. That's when I saw her. A woman in torn military gear crouched behind a boulder, eyes scanning the horizon like she expected death to come running through the trees. She spotted me before I could speak and leveled a makeshift spear in my direction. Name. Now, she barked. I raised my hands, slow and open. Name's Jim. Jim Walker. I'm not here to fight you. She stared at me a long time before lowering the spear. Sergeant Elaine Cortez. U.S. Special Forces. I joined her and she led me back to a small camp tucked into a rocky outcrop. There were 4 others, a big miner type named Pete, a kid maybe 20, scared out of his mind, and 2 more who looked like they hadn't eaten in days. None of them had answers. Just stories. One moment they were living their lives, the next, Everything went dark, and they woke up here. That's when we started comparing notes. This was a preserve. A fake ecosystem built by our captors, the Marexians. Their idea of sport, apparently. Drop in a few humans, monitor their behavior, release a few of their hunters, and sit back to watch. Like some kind of cosmic reality show where the losers bled out in the dirt. No weapons. No warning. Just teeth, claws, and whatever we could carve out of the landscape. The hunters came at night. We hadn't seen them yet, not fully, but we'd heard the sounds, clicking, chittering, the thrum of something fast-moving just out of sight. Pete said he saw one once, eyes glowing like embers in the dark, standing upright and holding something that looked like a spear but hummed like electricity. Cortez was already forming a plan. She wasn't one to sit around waiting to die. We'd need defenses, traps, watches. I offered to help. Told her I had experience. Military, survival, hunting things that thought they were hunters. She looked at me hard for a moment, then nodded. Good. We'll need every edge we can get. Because whatever was coming for us next, it wasn't looking to capture. It was coming to kill. The third night was when it really began. Up until then, we'd been ghosts in the trees, staying low, staying quiet. We set up a perimeter around the camp with sharpened sticks and crude noise traps, rusted bits of alien metal tied to string, bones rattling in old helmets, anything that might give us even a second's warning. But none of it helped when the Marexians decided to test us. Tyler was the first to go. He was one of the quieter ones, a college kid, barely looked 22. Smart, but not hardened. He took first watch that night. Said he owed it to the group. We found what was left of him at sunrise. Just the lower half of his body, slumped against a tree, the ground soaked through in a color that looked more black than red. His upper half was gone. No signs of a struggle. No tracks. Just vanished. That's when Cortez stopped holding back. She drilled the group hard the next day. Made us rotate watches in pairs, taught basic hand signals, movement formations, even how to kill with improvised weapons. She was different out here, cold, focused, not unkind, just running on instinct. I respected it. I'd seen leaders like her before. Combat had carved the softness out of her a long time ago. Me. I spent the day watching the trees, reading the signs. I noticed things the others didn't. Broken branches 10 feet off the ground. Scratch marks on stone that were too deep, too precise to be natural. These hunters weren't animals. They were tactical. Methodical. Every move had purpose. That night, they tested us again. This time, they went after the perimeter. One of the tripwires snapped with a high-pitched whine, and Cortez was up before anyone else, motioning silently. We fanned out, weapons raised, if you could call them weapons. A metal pipe, a jagged piece of plating, my sharpened walking stick. It was all we had. Then I saw it. A shimmer, like heat waves rising from asphalt, only this shimmer moved. It slinked along the tree line, almost invisible, until moonlight caught the curve of its arm, long, multi-jointed, and tipped with claws. I didn't hesitate. I hurled my stick like a spear, caught the thing right in the shoulder. It shrieked, and that was the first time we heard what they sounded like. A raw, scraping scream that vibrated in your gut. It vanished into the dark, bleeding something that hissed on the ground like acid. The rest of the night, we didn't sleep. We didn't speak. Just listened. And waited. By morning, something had changed. They knew we weren't going to be easy. We knew what we were facing now, something stronger, faster, better equipped. But we also knew something they didn't. We could learn. We could adapt. And every second they let us breathe was another second we got closer to turning this hunt around. They thought fear would break us. That was the whole point, I think, to make us feel hunted, helpless, small. And when they unleashed that new creature, their elite predator, they weren't just trying to kill us. They wanted to shatter us. We heard the screams before we saw the aftermath. Pete had gone out on his own that morning. Said he was checking a trapline we'd set near the ravine, muttered something about needing space. I offered to go with him, but he waved me off. "Ain't my first rodeo," he'd said. His voice carried that stubborn pride that men like him wore like armor. He never came back. Cortez, and I found him strung up in the trees hours later. It wasn't just a kill, it was a message. His body was mutilated, organs displayed like some grotesque offering. His eyes were still open, still wet. Whatever had done it had intelligence. Cruelty. It wanted us to see what it was capable of. The kid, Benny, puked when he saw it. Couldn't even stand. Another woman, Francesca, started praying under her breath, eyes glassy with shock. Even Cortez went silent, jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. I just stood there, staring at what was left of Pete, and something cold settled in my chest. They wanted a reaction. Wanted us to feel powerless. But all they did was make it personal. We burned Pete's remains. Not for ritual, there wasn't time for that. But to deny the hunters their trophy. Then we gathered what scraps we had and started planning. Cortez was a storm now, calculating, merciless, and somehow still composed. She talked about patterns, territory, pressure points. But it was her next plan that changed everything. We were going to hit them. We'd seen a patrol route, 2 hunters making regular passes near a cave system on the northern edge of the preserve. It was the one place we'd never gone. Too open. Too exposed. But now it was bait. We spent 2 days turning that cave into a trap. We layered the walls with crude explosives we jerry-rigged from alien circuitry and volatile chemicals scavenged from crashed drones. The detonation system was primitive. Manual wires, a pressure plate, and a trigger built into a cracked communicator. I volunteered to be the bait. Cortez didn't like it, but she didn't argue. The plan worked better than I expected. I led them in, 2 tall, cloaked bastards moving like ghosts behind me. I ran, stumbled, let them think I was panicking. When I hit the trigger, the cave lit up like the 4th of July. The blast shook the hills. Debris rained down for 10 seconds straight. We found the bodies later, or what was left of them. Twisted metal. Black blood. One of them still twitched, until Cortez finished the job with a steel spike through what we guessed was its skull. That was the first time I heard one of them scream in pain. Not fear. Confusion. They didn't understand how prey could strike back like this. But they would. And soon. We didn't mean to find the control tower. It found us. We were scouting near the western cliffs, Cortez, Benny, and me. We'd seen smoke the night before, strange flickers of light arcing through the clouds like lightning with direction. Alien tech, we figured. Maybe a drone had crashed, or one of the Marexians had slipped up. What we found instead was a downed patrol ship, half buried in a ravine, its hull cracked open like an overripe melon. Bits of glowing metal, shattered panels, and something that looked like a melted antenna jutted out from the wreckage. The whole thing hummed, still alive somehow, sparking with blue energy that smelled like burned copper. Inside, the walls pulsed faintly, flickering with alien glyphs and streaming data. Cortez went to work immediately, wiping grime from a glass panel, tracing patterns with her fingertips like she could read the Marexian language through pure intuition. She muttered to herself, deciphering lines of code while Benny and I kept watch. Then she froze. I looked over. Her face had gone pale, but her eyes burned with something, rage or revelation, maybe both. "They're broadcasting it," she said. "Broadcasting what?" I asked. "This," she hissed, motioning around the ruined ship. "All of it. The hunt. They're sending it to other worlds. Alien systems, different species. We're a goddamn live feed." Benny stepped closer. Like a show. Like a war crime turned into primetime entertainment. The realization hit me like a punch to the chest. We weren't just surviving some sick game, we were performing in it. Every trap, every kill, every scream, it was being watched. Cheered for. Judged. Cortez dug deeper, bypassing firewalls, feeding commands into the system with borrowed alien code and soldiers' intuition. Her hands moved like she was born to hack a spaceship. Then she found something even more damning. "This isn't their first preserve," she whispered. "There've been others. Dozens. Hundreds. Other species. Some extinct now. Wiped clean." I could feel the fire building behind her words, that cold, calculating fury only someone like her could wield. She wasn't just angry. She was planning. What if we shut it down? Benny asked. The feed. The whole system. Cortez nodded slowly. We do more than shut it down. We hijack it. We took what we could, data chips, portable transmitters, fragments of interface panels. We hauled them back to camp under moonless skies, half expecting to be hunted down before we reached the tree line. But the Marexians didn't strike. Maybe they were distracted. Or maybe they were watching, curious what their little predators would do next. Back at camp, Cortez built a relay from scavenged parts and linked it to the transmitter we'd pulled. She tapped into the main feed, bypassing encryption through a brute force method that melted 2 processors in the process. Then, with a press of a button, she did it. She hijacked the feed. Her voice rang out across the galaxy. This hunt is over. This show is dead. You want blood? Come and try ours. But just know, now the hunters are hunting you. And the galaxy listened. The response came faster than we expected. Not from the Marexians. No, they stayed quiet, like they couldn't believe what had just happened. Their broadcast was hijacked, their control compromised, their game exposed. For the first time, they weren't in control. And that scared them. You could feel it in the way the patrol slowed, the hunters stopped testing the perimeter, and the skies above buzzed with uncertainty instead of dominance. But the galaxy was listening. We started getting signals, fragmented at first, weak bursts through the static. Voices, images, languages we didn't understand. But some messages were clear enough. Symbols of resistance. Words translated by machine. Asterisk, we saw. We rise. Asterisk, others were desperate, pleading for hope, asking if what they saw was real. Apparently, they'd been watching these hunts for years, some as entertainment, some as warnings of what could happen to them. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were revolutionaries. Icons. A spark in a powder keg that had been waiting centuries to ignite. So we took it further. We knew the Marexians wouldn't let this stand. They'd come to erase the stain, clean the broadcast, bury us in silence. So we hit first. Using coordinates we'd scraped from their ship's logs, Cortez identified the forward operating base, the nerve center for the preserve. It was buried beneath the artificial terrain, masked by camouflage and shield generators, but not invincible. We gathered everything we had, sharpened metal, makeshift bombs, and the last of our stolen tech. 10 of us remained. Most had lost someone. All of us had nothing left to lose. We moved at dusk. The entrance was hidden beneath a false cliff face, but Benny managed to disable the locking mechanism with a shorted-out communicator and a car battery we'd salvaged from a crashed hover skiff. Once inside, the base was alive with that same oily hum, lights pulsing in a sick rhythm. There were guards, Marexian handlers, smaller than the hunters but faster, armed with wrist-mounted weapons that fired beams of sizzling light. We lost Francesca in the first volley, her chest punched open by plasma. But we kept going. Room by room, we tore through them. Cortez led the charge, silent and brutal. I watched her put down 3 Marexians with a single sweep of a pipe wrapped in razor wire. Benny took one in the leg and kept fighting, dragging himself down a hallway while laying down suppressing fire with a scavenged plasma rifle. We reached the control chamber, a dome of glowing data and floating panels, like standing inside a living brain. At its center, the Marexian chieftain waited. Taller than the rest. Claws like bone scythes. It moved like liquid metal, too fast to follow. But it bled just like the others. I took it down myself, drove a spike straight through its midsection, twisted until it screamed in 3 frequencies. Cortez activated the master link, opened the feed again. This time, she didn't ask. She promised. We're done running. This ends now. We know you're watching. Know this, humanity is coming. And we don't forget. Then we burned the place down. We left that place as ghosts and legends. A smuggler ship touched down a week after the broadcast. An old, battered vessel piloted by an insectoid named Drexel, part of a species the Marexians had enslaved generations ago. He didn't speak much. Didn't need to. The moment he saw Cortez, he dropped to one knee with those segmented arms and bowed his head like she was royalty. He'd seen the feed. Everyone had. The galaxy had changed in days. Drexel's ship took us off-world, skipping past what remained of the Marexian patrols. Their empire had started to unravel. Word spread like wildfire, of humans who fought back, who turned the hunt inside out. Other species, long thought broken or subservient, rose up with stolen weapons and rebel chants echoing through space stations and mining colonies. We were symbols now. Benny went with Drexel's crew, said he wanted to learn alien tech, become more than a survivor. He wasn't the scared kid I met anymore. There was something sharp in his eyes now, something tempered by fire. Cortez, she stayed behind, sort of. Not on the preserve, but on the front lines. She accepted a position within a fledgling resistance network, something pan-galactic that had formed almost overnight. She didn't care about titles, but they gave her one anyway. Commander. Leader of the Terran contingent. I asked her if she was sure. She looked out at the stars from the cargo bay and said, "This galaxy made a mistake when it woke us up." As for me, I went home. Not right away, and not without scars. But eventually, Drexel dropped me on Earth, near where it all began. The porch was still there. My tools, long rusted. The coffee tin empty. But the air. It was real. It tasted like pine and river rock and dust. No hum of alien machinery, no perfect trees or looping birdsong. Just Earth. Imperfect, chaotic, alive. I rebuilt slowly. Repaired the roof. Refinished the steps. Grew my own food. Sometimes I watched the stars, wondering which of them still remembered my name. Other times, I sat in the dark and thought about Pete, Francesca, Tyler, all the ones who didn't make it. But most nights, I waited. And they came. Not to hunt. Not anymore. Sometimes it was a message ping from Cortez, sent through back-channel resistance relays. A few words, a shared victory, a system liberated. Other times, it was a knock on the cabin door, visitors from distant worlds, rebels, soldiers, even historians, all wanting to speak to the old man who turned the game around. I always told them the same thing. I didn't change the galaxy. I just reminded it what humans are. One night, I was watching the stars when a young girl stepped off a lander. She couldn't have been more than 12. She asked, timid and wide-eyed, "Is it true? You were taken by aliens?" I nodded slowly. Sipped my coffee. "They thought they were hunters," I said. "But they didn't know what they were hunting." She asked what happened next. I smiled. "We hunted back."